What's up, fellas?
What's up? What's up?
Hey, hey, hey.
I love that intro. I gotta say, I absolutely love it.
It really gets your blood pumping.
Yeah, sets the tone, huh?
Absolutely. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Worky Wednesdays. It's been a minute,
It's been a while.
but I am your host, Jesse, and I am here with my main man, Blayne.
Locked in.
And George. What's up, brother?
Hello, everybody.
Great to see you, man. Great to see both of you guys.
It's great to be here with you. It feels like it's been forever.
Yeah,
right.
It has been, actually. It's been quite a minute. Dude, happy 4th of July to both of you.
Yes, thank you. Likewise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't
Thank
know.
you to all of you who are out there.
Yeah, I don't know if the camera can pick it up. We got stars and stripes hanging in the background.
Yes.
God bless, baby.
Yeah.
God bless America.
What did you guys do for the 4th?
I actually got a chance to hang out with some really cool people, man.
Yeah.
My Friday morning, I ended up hanging out with an old retired. Well, he was an Army guy. He was a tanker, but he was also a Bethlehem detective at one point. So we hung out for a little bit, and at the end of the meal, there was another veteran sitting across by himself, and he goes to the waitress, "Hey, can you do me a favor? Just bring me his check. And I want to pay for his meal." So, he says he does that very often. So he's a disabled veteran now.
Very cool.
Then I got a chance to hang out with a bunch of other crazy veterans and their crazy veteran kids, or who are still serving. So I did a lot of eating, a lot of too many deviled eggs, and at the end, I ended up going home because I needed to actually take that time to just unwind.
Yeah.
And just do me.
Yeah.
What about you guys?
Beautiful, beautiful. By the way, that sounds like a great time.
Oh my God.
Me, I actually spent it, enjoying my time with the family. Right. I got to spend great time with two of my really good friends, and one of them has a son. Spent it with them, spent it with the family all weekend, and then, to touch on yesterday a little bit, went fishing yesterday with the same guys.
Oh yes.
Absolutely amazing time. I think fishing for me, this is my first time fishing since I was a kid. Fishing for me, though, is that decompression time.
Yes,
just sit there,
indeed.
enjoy it, get a good cast out, catch absolutely nothing.
Yeah. Did you fish in a lake or a pond or what?
We went to Lake Sanatoga, I believe it's pronounced.
Do you know where that's at?
I don't.
I don't know where that's at either.
It's over by, it's about an hour away over in Pottsville.
Oh, okay.
I went to go pick up my youngest brother, and him and his dad live out there.
Okay.
So I went to go pick them up, and yeah, he mentioned that, so we went there.
Do you have to have a fishing license to go there?
Yes, absolutely.
So
I
you
think
broke the law?
no. I have a fishing license.
you? Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Well, me and my best friend actually as soon as I got back, we went to just go get them right away.
Okay, cool.
What about you, Jesse? What did you do on 4th of July?
4th of July was relaxing. Got to hang out with my brother. Got to hang out with this young buck coming home. He's temporarily on leave. George stopped by, man. Great to see you. Great to see all of the family and friends, extended family.
Yes.
My brother owns a nice chunk of land out in the suburbs somewhere, so he has a lot of room for everybody to kind of do what they want to do and relax, and horseshoes and quates and swimming and everything in between. So it was a good time. But then we always make it a point to get back to spend time with the dogs. A couple of them don't really like the loud bangs and whatnot. So my big guy tries to get underneath the bed. So we got back a little early. Just we turn the volume up on most of the TVs or get some music playing in the background, and then just just chill and relax for the remainder of the night. So it's fun, but it was a relaxing weekend. It was a long weekend. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So it's a long weekend, especially when it falls on the Friday. So it was cool.
So what about you guys? Comment, please. Comment below and let us know what you did, because we like to actually watch this. Like to know that we're engaged with you. And what did you do? What was the most memorable part of your 4th of July?
Yeah, and another one in the books too. So, I always make it a point to send out to the kids, George. I always send them a text message or a video of somebody showing off with fireworks and blowing their fingers off or something like that, just to say, hey, you know what? don't forget, don't do this.
Yeah.
Because we've all been there. Everybody wants to hold the fireworks in the air and, hey, and all of a sudden it explodes and takes a couple fingers with it. So I always try to throw out that stuff to the kids.
I think
Very smart.
people tend to forget that a firework is like kind of legitimately an explosive.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
Exactly what it is.
Yeah. So Blayne and I were talking. Blayne's been a guest on several of our pods in the past, and he has a pretty good idea, and I think it's great that we run with it. The topic of today's discussion is going to be the differences between the generational men nowadays as opposed to when you and I were in our 20s, early 20s, mid 20s, late 20s, etc. And you want to talk about, just a few decades, let's say 2 decades, give or take, right?
Yeah.
And just some generational differences that are blatantly obvious. And then, there's a lot of similarities as well.
Right.
So we'll jump into that.
Well, let's just talk about the price of rent back then. Right? You could get a 2-bedroom apartment.
$515.
Exactly.
Right out of the gate. That was me. As soon as I got out of the military, I bought I rented a 2-bedroom, 1 full bath apartment. I was walk-in level from the back of the building, but I was on the 2nd floor. I had a deck out the front, and $515 is what I locked that in for. What about you?
Same. I remember, my daughter was born in 1999, and hell, I remember getting an apartment with her mother and her daughter, Michaela, who's the oldest, Bradley's oldest sister, and I think we paid maybe around $600 for a 2-bedroom.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Because I believe nowadays, I think the bare minimum is, like $1,200 nowadays? At least $1,000
for a 1-bedroom in Center City.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you're talking, I would say, 15
efficiency.
to 1,800 right now.
Yeah.
If you're going to get an apartment in an area that you feel comfortable and safe walking around the perimeter of the building. So,
so that alone is actually a huge difference between now and then.
Yeah.
But then, people in general, we were expected to act differently. We're expected to be, to mature quicker. We were expected to take on responsibilities as soon as we turned 18. That's the turn in our time where I felt like, you had to pack up, and ship out in so many ways, right? 18 meant free, a different type of freedom. I think we all joined the military around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I feel that at 18, you were almost expected to have your own life, whether it was going to college, going away, learn something, trade school, but not stay at home.
right.
Staying at home and not doing much or not contributing to society was not an option.
I also want to say, I know we're probably going to loop back around to it later, right, further down the conversation, but I think that's one of the things, too, that, you guys are talking about getting, moving out, living on your own for, $500, $600, right? And I think that's something that applies satisfaction, accomplishment, achievement.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Because nowadays, with it being so hard to do that and so expensive to do that, well, how do young men such as myself sit here and get that satisfaction of, oh, awesome, I live on my own?
Well, it goes to masculinity and the differences between this generational gap. So back then, like George had touched on, it was our goal in terms of masculinity to get out and be on our own, and one way, shape, or form to make it happen.
Right.
So, and by way, what I mean when I say that is general or different sources of income, right? So I knew that my rent was $515, and I knew that my electric was X amount of dollars, and so on and so forth. My car payments, my insurance. So I definitely had a primary source of income to cover those expenses. But I also was a young buck, like you guys, and I enjoyed going out and spending time with my friends. So I had to get a second source of income to cover those expenses.
Right.
And then on top of that, I was also a father, so I needed more expenses to do family things with my kid and this and that. So I got another source of income to cover for those expenses.
Right.
So, like, I think that's a very big difference nowadays. Is I don't know, many kids in young 20s or mid 20s or late 20s that have more than one source of income.
Right.
So, for me, if it was if I had some time to hang out with the buddies and the family and see the family when I can, then that was great for me. But I also knew that I had to grind, man. Grind 30 was from Monday to late Friday night or early Saturday morning. That was grind 30.
Right,
And then
right.
come Saturday or Sunday, those were kind of like, mainly Sunday was my relaxed time.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, like it just seems like that's a big difference nowadays.
Yeah.
Whereas you guys, it seems like the generation nowadays is expected to just sit at home and relax and kick their feet up and let mom and dad handle all of the frustrations. And
Right.
so, I mean, what are you seeing out there? How?
I mean, I believe that, for at least young men, around my age, right, it's hard to sit there and find these sources of income. But on the flip side, it's also easy as well, because what are we afforded? We're afforded, phones, social media, all these things. But I feel like everybody's kind of looking for all these sources of income, right? Whether it be a second job or, your own business. There's a lot of competition right now, right? You want to be a business owner? Well, there's 20 other people in your area that are trying to be business owners, right? So you got to have uniqueness to your business. You got to be thinking outside of the box heavily nowadays.
But
right?
that's the get rich quick thought process, and that's not really reality. So when I say a second source of income, I mean mowing yards. That could gain you an additional $100 for the weekend.
Right.
Delivering newspapers. I don't even know if that's a thing anymore, but
Right.
you catch my drift. For George and I, working night shift at nightclubs and things like that, whether that brought an additional $200 every 2 weeks or $100 a week.
Right.
So those were the things. It's not like nowadays with the evolution of social media, you see the kids driving around in Lamborghinis and with mansions, and they have 100 or they have 55 million followers and 2 million views on their videos and things like that.
Right.
So those guys are making extensive revenue or capital. Like they're bringing in some revenue. They're getting paid by social media outlets.
Right.
So I think your generation think that that's some sort of standard, and like that's the goal to get to. When in reality, nobody's getting there.
Yeah.
Like that's so far fetched, and those people, it's a blessing. Mm-hmm. But at the same token, they also work very hard at doing that. Your social media influencers.
Yeah.
Those guys are working very hard to do that, and
Right.
there's a big, there's a lot of planning going on and marketing and expenses to get that stuff to those levels, those videos. So, I just figured, as growing up, I needed to make that extra income. So, I was scraping whatever I can do. Like even now, even to this day, Blayne, on Sunday mornings, for 3 months out of the spring and 2 months out of the fall, I'll referee flag football, and it's a couple $100 for that, for the day. Yeah. So it takes up my whole day. It can be an inconvenience if my family wants to do something, but in reality, it's a job, and I'll utilize, that as my spending money, or, so it never stops.
With these things here, your cell phones, I don't have any of these apps, but there's Uber Eats, and they're always looking for people to actually deliver, right?
Correct.
Uber Eats. I know that you have big places like your supermarkets or your Walmarts that have their own delivery system, right? So you kind of have to stand or sit in your car out behind them.
Correct.
And they deliver. I don't know if that's part of Uber Eats or not. I still personally like to get up, get out, touch, things in the supermarket or whatever I need, and I'll go myself. So I've never used those apps, but nevertheless, you also have Uber. You also have what's the other driving app?
I know what you're saying.
Yeah,
the
the pink
driving
one.
apps, correct. Yeah, Lyft.
Thank you. You also have Amazon that you can use your own car. Now you could work directly for the hospitals, transplanting or driving organs or medication from one hospital to another, and then they pay really good money for that. And you could do that on a part-time basis. And still be able to make money. Where when we were your age,
Right.
the biggest thing was, let's get a state job, let's get a government job, let's
20 years in and out.
Right, exactly. And yes, no, when I left your dad's house on 4th of July, I started driving. I was driving home, and on my way home, I took the back roads. And I started seeing these old buildings that at one point belonged to the government. And now they're overgrown.
Interesting.
Right? Now there are businesses that at one point were there. It was a couple of days back that we used to have a state hospital.
Oh, yeah.
And I drove by there not too long ago, and that state hospital is no longer there. Right? There's nothing there. They're going to build something else on it. But those were the dream jobs, right? Those were, hey, pass your, I forget whatever test you had to take. And, you passed that test and you were able to actually qualify for any kind of government job, whether it was the post office or one of the things that we no longer have are
toll booths.
The toll booths.
Yeah.
A lot of things are being replaced, and other new jobs, easier. I call it easier.
Right.
Things that we didn't have to make other people's life easier, like these delivery jobs or driving jobs,
Right.
are now being put into place by apps. And, you could drive for Uber and for Lyft, and at the same time, do what other kind of, be an influencer.
Right.
And at the same time, maybe even hold your full-time job.
Yeah.
Right. Until that it now becomes a thing. I guess what people are trying to do now that we couldn't do then was, be able to sit at home and do the things, the editing, the videos, becoming an influencer.
Right.
And make a lot more money than we ever even thought of making. Because back in our time, it was about either getting a trade, whether it was an electrician, a plumber, HVAC.
Right.
Working for the government, they didn't really teach entrepreneurship when we were younger, right? It was dad went to work, they did a 9 to 5. We were products of
our becoming, our parents.
Right, exactly, and our teachings, what you learned.
Yeah.
Where now, so much easier to actually pick up and self-diagnose yourself.
Right. The world's at your fingertips.
The world is at our fingertips right now. If I have any questions, all I need to do is get on the phone.
Right.
So how do you think that impacts the new generation and the fact that we could now, you could now work 3 or 4 or 5 jobs?
Yeah.
It's at your fingertips, and you might not even have to leave home or your car for that.
I think one of the big things is what's the word? We were just talking about fulfillment.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not going to lie. Like, we sit here and we talk about all these different sources of income, right? But it's all about how you, at least nowadays, right? Because I know for a fact back then it wasn't like that for you guys probably, but you want to be fulfilled with what you do. I want to do something that has meaning, that has purpose. Right. So a lot of these young men, that maybe need these sources of income, they need to, humble themselves a bit or how do you say, bring their ego down a notch.
Well said.
That's what it really is bring your ego down a notch. Right. You're sitting here struggling, trying to work just one job. Well, yeah, maybe we need to go do that. But I think to answer your question, I think social media is absolutely the one big thing that is making it so the standard is being a millionaire, right? That's the standard nowadays because of social media.
You know, you're talking about fulfillment. Today, our pastor in church talked about entitlement.
Yeah.
And a lot of us often feel entitled. You know, if our parents made a lot of money and we're not doing as great as our parents did,
Yeah.
you know, we feel entitled that they should help us get on our feet. You know, our parents have a nice house, and we can't afford to be in the same kind of have the same kind of living that our parents have or had. Now we feel that we should be entitled to live under our parents' roof at the age of 40 and still be taken care of and provided for by our parents.
Right.
And we should be able to actually act like the little babies that we were while we were in middle school and high school. And I know in high school I had 2 jobs. One of them my parents didn't even know of.
Right.
You know why? Because I wanted to make extra money. But now people feel entitled and feel that things should be done for them.
See, and we had video games and things like that
we did.
back then. We did. But I think laziness is a big difference, a generational difference. Now, again, we were young and we were lazy. We had those tendencies that everybody else had. However, I think the masculinity part of it was we strived to get out there and get grinding and get going on our own. Nowadays, I think just with the evolution of technology and it gives people the opportunity, young adults, the opportunity to just sit back and relax and just enjoy technology, whether it's video games or movies or YouTube or sound, music, whatever.
Yeah.
So
We had our grandparents that were a different type of role model in our lives.
Sure.
And our laziness
yeah,
was only it only went so far until we were told to leave the house.
Yes.
We were made, don't you dare come back until dusk.
right.
Right? Don't you dare come back. Go get out there and do something
Right.
until the lights go on outside. And that was our cue to actually come back home. Now, we can't even go out. We don't feel safe in society because we're afraid that something's going to happen. And our parents, for whatever reason, are not the same as it used to be. Instead of throwing you outside to play till dusk,
Right.
now it's here you go, honey. Here, go play whatever roadblocks or And what I see a lot of is your head down, and you're doing this on your tablet all day.
Sure.
And then you're walking around. The first time the kid cries, the parent just shuts him up by giving him a tablet.
Yeah. Go ahead, Blayne. Go ahead. Yeah. What were you gonna say?
So one thing that you touched on is the video games, the music nowadays. I think another thing that really makes you lazy with these telephones, right, is you remember when you had a new movie that came out and you didn't want to go to the theaters? Where'd you go? Blockbuster.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
A new disc dropped, a new CD dropped. Somebody put out some new music.
And that meant us getting up and getting out of the house, and
Yes.
et cetera.
Radio
point.
Shack, Blockbuster.
Wow.
Everything is so easily accessible from your phone now.
Yeah.
True.
So even going to the store, going to Blockbuster to get a new movie, right? Nobody wants to leave their house anymore.
So these topics bring up another great point to discuss nowadays, and I think there's a large gap in this generational difference of mental health.
Yeah.
So, George, I don't know that word was even viable when we were in our young 20s. If I was to go complain to my dad about something, he'd probably just wrap me upside the head and say, suck it up, buttercup, and go get out there and do it, and go try again.
Sure.
My have things changed.
Yeah.
And what's to blame for that? Again, is it social media? Is it, all these outlets or accessibility through phones and internet, etc. But there is a huge difference from even the definition of mental health
versus suppression.
Right? Yeah. I think today with these younger kids nowadays, that's something that everyone seems to grasp onto. Oh, I have mental health issues. Mm-hmm. That's why I'm not doing this, or that's why I'm not doing that, or feel bad for me because I have mental health issues. Man, certainly was not like that when we were growing up.
It's okay to do that. It's okay to actually have somebody you confide in.
Sure, 100%. Right.
You and I have very deep conversations.
Right. And I don't want it to make it think that I'm a believer of mental health issues. I am. I get that. I think the way that it was handled
for us
is a big difference, generational difference.
There was no such thing.
Right. Nowadays, again, I do think nowadays people do take advantage of it.
I agree.
But I mean, I don't know. What's your take on experiencing mental health issues?
I like that last thing you said right there is people take advantage of it, right? Because, I will say I think it is you are more of a liability nowadays to sit there and probably be depressed than it was back in the day, or have these, anxiety, have these things because, we don't also have to have social interactions, right? You do everything through the phone. But to answer your question, though, I think that's the most important thing right there is that people do take advantage of it. But I do think there is very serious problems with it because, you got to feel good, right?
Sure.
Back in the day, you guys said it perfectly, right? You had your fathers there to, tell you to get over it, basically. Not that that's the best way to do it, but you're not so much thinking of, oh, this is the end all be all, right?
Right.
And now, without actually communicating and maybe talking to people like you were talking about, confiding in people, right? Because once again, just text them. Without that, I think that's where people do get stuck in their head a little bit. You overthink about something, which takes you down a deeper, darker path. And I just think it is problematic. But people tend to take advantage and say, "Oh, I'm depressed too. Mm-hmm. Oh, I have anxiety too." Sure. They want to take advantage and.
I mean. So I'm a numbers guy. So from a statistical standpoint, I would say roughly, I think it's up into the high or mid 60s now of broken families and children being brought up in broken families.
Yeah.
That can certainly play a toll in mental health, but at the same token, it's I think all three of us were brought up in broken families. Yeah, literally.
You're right.
So you have to at the end of the day, yeah. Well, I mean, it's normalized. In reality, it is normalized nowadays.
Yeah.
Right.
Go back to our parents and when they were younger, and then their parents being raised, back when the wooden spoon was a term of punishment, right? So
it was a chancleta for me. Bro, my mom was a huge fan of this thing right here. Bah! Right in the butt, dude. Yes.
So I just think, mental health nowadays is just handled differently. And, it's tough not to say, suck it up, buttercup, like my dad always said to me. It's like, and I'm not really built to cater it, if that's a word to say. Like, I'm still learning how to deal with that. But
it's tough.
Yeah, it is tough with our background.
It's what we were taught.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then we joined the military soon after. So,
sure.
Yeah.
I want to say, as men, right, I think we like to make things make sense, right? We all have a logical side and we all have an emotional side,
yes.
Right? Our logical side is 2 + 2 is 4. Our emotional side is like, questioning, hey, I don't want 2 + 2 to equal 4, whatever the case may be, right? But I think what's really important, because like I said, I struggle. I will say I struggle with, my mental health at times, right? But what I will say is what really helps me, is knowing why I feel this way, right? Or how I got to feel this way, right? Because maybe some things where, as we just said earlier, the three of us come from broken households, right? Well, I may have also instilled, even on the negative side, I might have bad habits, right? I have bad habits that I've had since I was a kid. And understanding why I am that way is so big because that makes sense. Right?
Yeah.
Now I could work to stop that because I know, okay, I know more about myself after self-reflection. Oh, when I'm upset, I tend to shut down, right? I don't talk about it. I'm a man. I don't cry about it. I don't talk about it. But when I sit here and I understand why it's like that, right, is because, I mean, me personally, especially being the military, which all three of us are, right? I think that's another thing that really crushes that because, your NCOs or your leaders tell you guys to go do something that doesn't make sense to you. Mm-hmm. And it's frustrating. But at the end of the day, whether you cry about it or complain about it, whatever the case may be, guess what? You're still going to go do that.
So I think it's safe to say that I don't want to say the correction to mental health, but I think something that is very helpful for anybody with mental health is to communicate.
I was going to go there.
Whether it's to a doctor, a physician, friends, family, superiors, somebody is always there to communicate to. And I think at the end of the day, that is one of the best answers to facing mental health issues and crises.
So please do not suppress your feelings out there. Do not suppress your feelings. That's one of the worst things, because what happens is you end up going down this rabbit hole, and by suppressing it, often you go into a darker place, and it's sometimes hard to actually get out of that. So it's okay to pick up the phone and contact someone that you trust, whether it's an aunt or an uncle, whether it's a good friend.
Yeah.
Jesse and I get together almost every Monday.
Yeah.
And check up on one another. Whether it's...
You're going to have a rough week. You're going to have rough days. You're going to have rough weeks. You're going to have a rough year.
Yes.
Literally.
Yes.
Literally. Like, you get out and you get things off of your chest. You speak to somebody. In reality, somebody always is going to have it worse, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be people out there that, our roughest days would be somebody else's best day.
Indeed.
So always take that into consideration too. Your lifestyle, which again, Blayne, you're far away from family. You might be struggling and just really hating life at the moment. You're told to go do something that does not make sense up in the state where no other family is, and doing things that no one else can relate to out of all of your friends. But in reality, that situation that you're in at that exact and precise time is going to be 1,000 times better than somebody else.
Absolutely.
That is struggling on a level that we can't even relate to.
Absolutely.
So always taking that into consideration. Someone always is going to have a far off worse than what we do. But communicate, man.
What's the best way to actually... So if I call you, what's the best way to diffuse my anxiety or depression or anger or whatever it is that I might be going through where I'm about to blow up?
Well, first and foremost, I always listen. Like, so if we have a conversation, first of all, I want to listen, because when you get it off your chest, that's going to help you out in
How do you
reality.
get somebody to open up? I call you and I'm just fucking frustrated. What do you say?
Well, it's to communicate. Hey, what's going on? How was your day? First and foremost, like, hey, how's your day? What's going on? I always like to get together and do it and see in person. You can kind of pick off if somebody has something going on.
Yeah.
But get in front of somebody and just start asking questions.
Yeah.
How was your day? What's going on? You seem a little off. What's up, buddy? Everything okay? And then eventually, if you get the person to start to talk, then you just sit back and listen, right? So communication, again, it all goes back to communication. So
I will say, for that right there, I like to sit there and say I do get a phone call. I know somebody's off like that, right? Once you get them talking, I think getting them talking is a great starting point. But I think what happens after that is even more important, right? Because they're not talking. Talking isn't a thing that just makes you feel. I mean, sometimes it is, right? But sometimes maybe you need to guide them.
Followed by action, right?
Yeah, you need to guide them and ask questions of, hey, have you ever tried this before, right? Or, stuff like that per se, to sit there and because some people do just want to vent, right? or maybe some people, you know, I call Uncle Jesse and I say, hey, Uncle Jesse, you know, I have this really stressful situation going on and I don't know what to do, right? You could sit there, you being an older man and being able to provide me direction, right? I think providing direction is so important as well, because sometimes that's what people need as well.
You know, Blayne, you know, it's crazy to even think about because, again, you're my kid's age and you're getting to the point in your military career as an NCO where you're going to have to be really emphasizing these tactics to your own troops in time. And people are going to be coming to you with these exact issues and problems, and you're going to have to be, quote unquote, the therapist or the person that diffuses the situation and listens and speaks and gives advice.
Absolutely.
So it's going in full circle.
The motto was NCOs set the example. And I'm not sure if that's still the same motto.
It is.
So Jesse's absolutely right. You're at a different point where you are going to be the leader. You are going to be the one that people look up to and the one that people come to. Now, on top of that, you have your own stress.
Yeah.
You have your own life. You have your own demons that you're fighting.
Right.
And now you're having to listen to people and talk to people, which goes back full circle to what Jesse said. Finding somebody to talk to.
Right. I want to switch it up just a hair a little bit because we're talking about being an NCO and, you know, your objective is to climb the ladder.
Yeah.
And that ladder climbing experience was kind of instilled to both of us as well. And I think a big generational difference, you know, carrying forward with that is that's how we perceive life, both personally and professionally. Mm-hmm. It's always a ladder to climb. When I got out of the military, with the jobs that I was doing, I was trying to climb the ladder to get to the next level, When I owned my business, I was always trying to get to the next level, both personally and professionally. Now on the corporate side of the industry, I'm always trying to get to the next level. And, you know, sometimes that could be a curse, a good thing and a bad thing. It is something that I think a big generational difference in the kids your age nowadays out in the real world. It doesn't seem like anybody's trying to climb to get to that next level. I see a lot of kids and this youth just going out there working just to just to be relevant, right? No drive, no passion of climbing the ladder, and that blows my mind. I have a hard time trying to, you know, I can't even relate to that. I've never just sat there and got comfortable. Yeah. It's always about, so you're going to go through this, you know, hopefully with your mindset and having that military background, you'll get out and want to strive to get to the next level. But just know that it could be coming for you too, that sense of comfort and just, when I get out, I'm just going to get a job and just get kosher and comfortable and sit back and relax. It's almost like a curse.
Yeah. I believe that based off where I'm at now and how I'm elevating each and every single day now, how I build my skill set, right? With, you know, I am also blessed, right? With a beautiful support system with my family and friends. I go to therapy. And most importantly, I do pray to God always for anything.
Right on.
I think that's like a really big thing too. That social media, well, maybe not social media, but that men nowadays, right? Everybody wants to be, you know, at home, like I was saying earlier. And, you know, people aren't going to church. People aren't looking for that relationship with God. God is almighty, and God will absolutely sit there and be able to carry you through any situation.
Amen, brother.
Roger that.
So I think those are three things that I carry with me, and I think those are three things that will help me elevate and continue to climb that ladder.
Well said. So the word social media keeps popping up, and I got a touchy subject I want to dive into.
Okay.
So dating, right? So,
oh man,
I've been out of that game for a long time, but you two are in that game. So Blayne, you're post social media. George and I were pre social media. Mm-hmm. So dating nowadays, as opposed to like nowadays, there's the apps.
Yeah.
What are the dating, like Tinder or something like that?
Yeah.
Whatever dating apps. Back then, there was nothing of the sort.
Yeah.
Church.
You know, or supermarkets.
So where did you meet your daughter's mom?
I was still in the service.
Okay.
I was at Fort Town Gap, and I was at the NCO club, and that's the non-commissioned officers club or enlisted club. For those of you who don't know what that means, right? And there she was.
Yeah.
She was scoping me out. She thought I was hot. I had a cigar in my mouth. Little looks.
So it was in person, right?
It was in person. They didn't have any apps. They didn't, a lot of times, if I met somebody, usually it was like down in the grocery aisle or in the produce aisle, and I would lead with the conversation.
So Blayne, now with you, obviously now there's the evolution of social media and these apps and everything like that.
Yeah.
And nowadays, back then you couldn't ghost somebody if you had an issue with them. You couldn't just, because there was already the in-person relationship. Nowadays, though, everything's done on the apps. What did they ghost? It's catfishing and everything else in between. So, I mean, what was better? I don't, doing it in person
don't know.
Yeah.
I'll answer that right now. Absolutely, 210%, probably undebatable. I don't think there's anything that proves going over to the social media way and the dating apps way. I think 110%, I think you guys had it better, because it is so horrible sitting here trying to, talk to women through, social media, anything like that.
Yeah.
Because, once again, I think both you guys know me well enough. I have a very high energy personality, right? I also have a very enjoyable, I like to think, right, a highly enjoyable and respectful personality as well.
You do.
I would say.
Yeah.
Through a text message, nobody is getting that.
Truth.
Through a sliding of DMs,
Yeah.
whatever the case may be, you're not getting that, right?
Truth.
And then if somebody's texting, say I'm not even a texter. Say I'm a horrible texter because I'm not on my phone much.
Yeah, which you are a horrible texter.
Yes. It is so hard for somebody like me because I don't care to text. Look, I love this right here.
Yeah.
Sitting here,
Interaction.
yeah. I'm not a, hey, let me text you later. No, I don't really text anybody back. I'm horrible at that. So then it just limits me from who I can talk to.
Yeah.
Because if you're not willing to sit here and, hey, let's go out for a coffee. A lot of people don't even like going out to movies anymore, which is the weird part.
Yeah.
I'm a big movie guy. I want
think
to
we
see
are
the
too.
brand new movie, So I absolutely, and maybe that's just me, right?
Yeah.
Maybe some people, it is easy for them to sit there and send out these texts because they are texters and stuff. Out of curiosity, did you guys have, there's a big,
We had American Online.
You've
got mail.
Yeah.
there's a big, difference between introverts and extroverts.
Yeah.
I feel like back in your guys' day, correct me if I'm wrong, and this is a question. Did you guys have introverted people as well?
Occasionally.
I am an extroverted introvert.
Yeah.
Occasionally there was introverts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Occasionally.
I think
we
there's
did.
so many more introverted people
Of
nowadays
course,
too.
because you're confined to 4 walls and the computer screen
Yeah.
or a phone screen.
Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. But if you could give the old timer here any advice or tips, if
because I'm not dating.
Yeah.
I find myself searching for myself, meaning, just taking a deep dive into what it is that I need to do. And I often ask Jesse, it's like, Jesse, you've known me for a couple of decades.
Yeah.
You've seen who I am. What is it about me that makes me, whatever the case is.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know, man. I think that I am not easy on all the how people the entitlement
Yeah.
that's out there.
Well,
Okay.
perhaps you can take that advice from us. I met my wife at work,
Mm-hmm.
and we really got to learn and know each other over the years.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. I love how we met. I love how our relationship started, and then we both grew from there. So
But
perhaps
isn't that frowned upon now?
What?
Like
Workplace relationships?
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah, I guess you could say, but we weren't very open about it.
Yeah.
So, but in person. So perhaps you can take that advice moving forward. In person, grocery stores, church is a great place.
Yes, I absolutely love that one. And
It feels
I think
dirty, but it's
beautiful.
probably the best way to meet someone that has the same values
Well said.
that you do.
And I think that's the number one spot where you'll see or meet a God-fearing Christian woman.
Yeah, if that's
I
what you're
think-
looking for.
yeah.
Absolutely. I want to switch gears a little bit, though. So I know we touched a lot about work and income and stability versus flexibility. Back then, again, we talked about George and I about clocking in and grinding, working remote or entrepreneurship. There's some goals and tasks and the vision that we had moving forward. What are some of the struggles, Blayne, today that your generation is being faced with in terms of some financial struggles? I get it, like student loans,
Yeah,
inflation, cost of living, we've kind of briefly touched on.
right.
Your car is probably super expensive nowadays.
Yeah.
So, do you see, are those the things that are really holding you guys down? And like, what's your plan to overcome that?
I believe when it comes to things that hold us down, I really think it's just ourselves, right? For the real men,
Yeah.
right? For the guys that aren't taking advantage of the mental health problem, I think there's, I'm 25 years of age. There's so much that I need to do. There's so much I need to accomplish. And I feel like when you procrastinate maybe, or you have to actually wait for something and be patient, I think it's so hard sitting here trying to find satisfaction in what I'm doing, because I personally, a lot of times I feel like I'm not doing enough. And how I think we need to, I imagine there's a lot of men out there that are dealing with that.
Right.
And I believe how we overcome that, though, is that consistency.
I like
Consistency.
that. I like
right?
that. Yep.
Setting small goals. Because I have a lot of large goals. I have so many big goals, right? Maybe purchasing my first house, paying off my car, the list goes on and on. But consistency, right?
Right.
Consistently having, maybe something that I do every day, right? I don't know if you guys remember that one speech, make your bed every day,
love
right?
it.
Beautiful, beautiful speech. And it's stuff like that, though. Consistency and building great habits.
Right. And that's also off of workplace stability,
Yeah.
consistency, because obviously in time comes pay raises
Yeah.
and promotions and
Yeah.
everything else. I can remember starting off at the cable company at X amount of dollars. And then when I left there, X amount of years later, I was a nice chunk ahead. So it's just, consistency is always going to get you to move forward in life.
Out of curiosity, right? There's a big thing that goes on nowadays that everybody chases, and that's instant gratification.
Yes.
100%.
Did you guys, back in the day, back when you guys were my age, of course, right? Did you guys ever, feel lackluster or anything of the sort because of not having instant gratification? Or were you chasing instant gratification at all?
Brother, I am still chasing instant gratification.
Right,
and perhaps that's a curse of my own. And, to be quite honest, man, I just never really feel settled in life. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Those are some of the things that I ask myself often. I'm just never fully happy with where I'm at. I always have a vision. So if that answers your question, I mean, I feel very blessed in life. I understand hard work pays off, but I'm always chasing something. I'm always chasing the dream. And sometimes I get frustrated because it seems like that dream just keeps getting further and further away. But it goes back to kind of what I said earlier, whereas in my most comfortable spot where I'm not as happy as one should be, somebody else would be super happy in that same spot. So it's I've always been a chaser, man, and so I'm never instantly gratified. But I think that perhaps comes along with having extreme goals and a vision.
Another quick follow-up question for you, right? You keep bringing up if somebody else was, somebody either has it worse, or if somebody was else in your spot, they might be happier, right? Now, from my understanding, if I thought like that, I'm not going to lie, I feel like I would be minimizing my own emotions, right? If I'm hurting or I'm struggling, but the first thing I go to is somebody else has it worse, I'm fine, right? I just think that minimizes your emotions, and it's just one of those things that, you know, it could be maybe it works for you, but I know if I thought like that, I would be like, ugh.
I'm going to tell you one thing, brother. You know, my wife.
Yeah.
She listens to me whine and complain.
Yeah.
But she watches me grind and achieve and blast my goals.
Big support.
So it actually has. So it's. I always encourage the kids. You know, my boys and my sons. You know, go through life together with somebody, because they're going to see you at your weakest, and they're going to understand and know your vulnerabilities, and we all have them. But when you know, on a Saturday night at 11:30 p.m. when I can't fall asleep because something's on my mind, I can just simply lean over and complain to her and bitch or whine to her. And whether she's listening or not, at least I'm getting it off my chest, and she can either give me words of encouragement, or she can tell me to suck it up, buttercup, and everything's going to be okay.
Right.
So if that answers your question, though, the instant gratification, I mean, George.
Yeah.
What do you?
Same question for you, George.
Man, listen, I've always been a dreamer.
Right.
When I was in middle school, I used to have a couple of posters of things that I wanted. I was been, you know, even before the book The Secret was out, right? I always had a dream board of things that I wanted, and I've worked really hard to get those things that I wanted.
Right.
My things were unfortunately material things. And I wish I would have set different priorities, but going back to instant gratification, you know, I'm always looking to be better. I don't know what instant gratification means to you, but I know that in order for me to get what I want, I have to do things that I don't want.
Yeah.
And I have to grind and work hard or smart.
Yeah.
But I'm dumb. I'm too dumb to work smart to get those things that I want. And I know what it takes.
Yeah.
And to go back to what you said, goals. Setting those goals, whether a visual.
Yeah.
Right? Because if I don't set goals in the morning, I find that I go into the office and I waste my entire day and things don't get done. Where if I write them down, I check them off. And whatever I don't check off, I transfer to another column of things that needs to be done for the next day.
Yeah.
And I get those done as a priority. So I'm not, I mean, Jesse's a numbers guy. I'm a thinker. You know, I have to see things down on paper. I have to check them off. I'm a routine guy. I have to see things and check things and you know, box things.
Right.
But, you know, one thing that I always do is I reward myself for my hard work. I could, whether it's a new pair of shoes, maybe a dress shirt, maybe a sport coat. I always, and again, back to instant gratification. It means something different to everyone, but I never settle. And I always want more. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. It's a blessing and a curse. My grandmother once said that the harder she worked, the more blessed she was. So don't stop the grind.
An attitude of gratitude. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Absolutely love that.
Yes.
Well said. What I would say too through that though is, if you haven't got anything out of what George just said is, you know, it's the hard work. At the end of the day, it's the hard work and being thankful for it and having the ability to do that. What frustrates me sometimes nowadays is seeing younger generations, your kids, your generation getting these cars that they cannot afford.
Yep.
Just going out and blowing money and just getting things to instantly gratify themselves without putting in the extended time, work, and effort. You know, why go out and get a car if you're making, you know, $22 an hour? Why go out and get a car that's going to cost you, all in all, $800 to $900 to $1,000 a month, $800 to $900 to $1,000 a month? I mean, it's it doesn't make sense, especially, but at the, you know, you learn through trials and tribulations, but it is frustrating seeing that. And, you know, I see that often. My kids have done the same thing, and it's just sit back and this, man, you know, so.
I will say, after hearing you guys, I absolutely, especially off what you just said as well, that little touch up at the end there, right? I think that's one thing about me that I completely understand. And a lot of my friends, they like to come and talk to me because, you know, whether I bring them closer to God, give them a solution, or just listen to them, I have versatility in dealing with other people's problems and being there for absolutely everybody I can, right? So, but one thing that I really love about that, when people do ask me advice of oh, you know, I'm thinking about getting this new car, I'm not going to lie. I always tell them, I'm like, I wouldn't do that. Don't make that crazy investment, because that same $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 you could put into a car, you could
Buy
put
a
towards a
house.
house. Yes.
It's
Buy
not
a house.
A car is not an investment.
No, it depreciates the moment you drive off that lot.
And it seems nowadays, like your generation isn't even looking to buy a house. But that's what it seems like. It seems like, you know, back then
they can't afford it.
No.
Look at the houses. Look at the house prices when we bought.
But in reality,
Even 5 years ago.
right? In reality, it's when you accumulate all the principal, interest, tax, and insurance together, it's not too much of a difference between the rent nowadays.
Truth.
So, to your buy a house and start building that equity.
No, that's very true.
I do believe that it is difficult, especially nowadays, to afford a house, right? Because if you're a young single man such as myself, right? If I have a really good paying job, you know, let's say, you know, $80,000 a year, right? And then I do other side hustles and I have something on the side that's also, you know, another source of income. Well, you know, you got to think, I don't know, I'm not going to speak numbers too perfectly, right? But I don't believe that would maybe be enough to afford a house, afford car insurance, life insurance, paying off. Well, I hopefully pay my car off, but you get the drift.
Right. And to that point, though, ask questions. I just couldn't emphasize it enough. Ask questions.
Yeah.
If it's in the back of your mind to buy a house,
Yeah.
dig in with people who own houses and ask questions, and ask questions of those people that have that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But what the main thing I wanted to touch on there, though, was also, you know, sitting there having you know, your partner, right? Whether it be, you know, your wife or your husband, whatever the route is, right? Having a 2-income household, though, right? I feel like nowadays you really do have to combine incomes with another person to be able to afford a house.
It's a lot different than when our grandparents were growing up. You're absolutely right.
Right.
Because you guys, out of curiosity, you guys were able to afford your own house, right?
Correct.
You didn't need a person to support you to own a house.
I was single when I bought my first house.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that's the case nowadays. I do think you need to have, you know, if you don't have multiple sources of income, you need somebody else that has good, steady income coming in too.
Or work harder, like we talked about earlier.
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
I want to switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about role models, Blayne. Big generational difference.
Yeah.
You know, when George and I were younger, there were business icons out there that we idolized. Local people, or obviously our parents, etc. You know, who are you idolizing? Who is your generation idolizing nowadays?
Jeez.
Rappers.
I mean, it's really tough to say. I don't know that this is something that I could speak on people my age and my generation, because I also, who I really idolize are, you know, you, my dad, my grandfather, right? But and a bigger perspective, you know, people that I look up to, it goes back to somebody we talked on last podcast, which is a rapper, right? Depending on what substance you bring to the table, right? What music you listen to and what you listen to, whether you're listening to this podcast right now or you listen to a certain genre of music because you either relate to it, it reminds you of things, right? But I think certain rappers, right, and depending on it, I'm sorry, it's really dependent on what type of content you consume now.
Sure.
So if you're a big sports guy, you know, obviously you're idolizing LeBron James, Tom Brady, right? If you're a big music guy like myself, I love music, absolutely love it. I'm idolizing the, people that I want to emulate, not because I want to be a rapper or anything like that, but what they talk about, right? You have guys like J. Cole, right? So it's really dependent. I can't say these are the direct people that we idolize.
Right. I do feel like your generation does idolize some strange people in terms of like genre rappers and
Yeah, absolutely.
influencers or things of that nature.
Yeah.
What about you, George? Growing up, who's somebody that you idolized?
I don't have idols. Right now, it's gonna sound weird, but my only power, my only thing that I look up to right now is my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. The only thing that I find refuge in is, and I don't read much, but it's reading the Bible and praying. The people that I used to look up to, I find that they are human, just like I am.
Right.
And sometimes, especially now, and I'm not, I didn't grow up I grew up going to church, but I wasn't a person of faith. Right now, the only thing that I look at is some of the characters in the Bible and how they did things and how that pertains to modern day. And that's where I find my hope, my inspiration. And then this is going to sound really stupid, but there are two people in my life that I admire most. One of them is my daughter's godfather. His name is Blayne, which you met. And then you, Jesse. You have been a huge inspiration. I remember there was a time where I let you down. And I remember being on top of Blue Mountain in my car and talking to you and expressing to you. And that was one of the times I remember crying because I expressed myself in a way that I felt, right? And the respect that I have for you as a man, as a father, as a husband, as a friend, as a brother. You have taught me so much, and you have given me so much as far as advice, as far as lending an ear.
Right.
So idols, I don't have any, but people who I admire, respect, and would like to mold my life like them would be you, and it would be Blayne, and you guys have a lot in common.
Yeah, thank you. I would say for me, obviously, definitely obviously my dad. I was always really close with my dad. He was always a big idol for me. Just always liked what he did and wanted to do the things that he did.
Right.
Even as a grown man, I still like the things that he does. I like the things that he says and the things that he talks about. I'm always interested in what he has to say. So growing up, I always idolized him and said, "Man, I would like to be like that when I get older."
Right.
But I also found myself as I aged and went through different professions, I would always latch on to a senior person in that profession or a boss or something of the nature.
Right.
Joe Alertia, my guy that got me involved in the security industry. You know, I've always idolized him as well. The guy that brought me to corporate, the guy that hired me,
right.
the man Tommy. He just a great mentor and a friend moving forward in life. So I've always idolized people like that outside of my friend circle. As you know, and as I've preached in life, over the years, is to always surround yourself with people you want to be like. George and I've always admired George and his drive for passion, and we relate to the same things. We both like business.
Right.
And, you wouldn't catch me hanging out with people that are into things that I'm not into.
Right.
Detached myself from those people a long time ago.
Yeah.
So those are the people that I've kind of idolized over the years, and that I will continue to do so. And I just think that if there's someone that you can essentially picture yourself being somewhat like, whether it's a great leader, a mentor, a friend, a parent,
right.
It kind of gives you at least something that you can chase. And again, it could be the mirror too. People, you've heard that speech.
Yep.
So you can idolize the mirror too, but as long as
Right.
that mirror has a vision.
Right.
So
I do have a question for both of you, right? So obviously we sat here, like you said, we just touched on a bunch of different topics, right? Out of the many problems that, my generation faces, whether it's mental, financial, whatever the case may be, what do you think the one thing is that we could carry on from what you guys did to be where both of you gentlemen are at, that we could sit there and take with us to try to emulate you guys per se? Both of you.
Persistence, never giving up on your dreams,
Uh-huh.
writing your dreams down, because a goal that's not written down is just a dream.
Mm-hmm.
And there are a lot of dreams that could be found in the cemetery of people who never really did anything with those dreams, never carried them through.
Right.
So my advice is that if you want a house, a white house with a red door, you write that down and you put it somewhere and you take a picture of it. I am a huge believer in pictures and seeing, putting things up where you could see them to remind you of what it is that you want out of life. And that's going to change year by year.
Yeah.
But you'll find that when you see things, when you visualize, when you have a vision board, that you are more likely to achieve those things that just saying that that's what you want and just leaving it go.
Yeah.
I would say for me, consistency. I would say for me, he said persistency. For me, consistency. When I became consistent in life, that's when I saw my life change.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely right, Jesse.
When you get up and start doing a routine and follow a routine and stay consistent with it, not only can you change the way you look, you can change the size of your wallet, you can change the walls that you live in, you can change the job you get up and do every single day. It's all about consistency. If you want to move forward in life, you have to consistency grow within your business or whatever vision that you have. So that was it for me, was consistency. And I think that's when I became consistent in doing the things that I do on a daily basis, my life started changing to the way that I wanted it to. You're growing up, you're going to be faced with a lot of obstacles. What you do when no one's looking is going to shape your path moving forward.
Truth.
So
Beautiful.
And back to what he said earlier, too, finding the right circle.
I think with that being said, Blayne, my advice to you, man, keep doing what you're doing. Embrace your surroundings, embrace your friends, but more importantly, embrace your family, because nobody wants you to succeed in life more than your family.
Absolutely.
Truth.
Ask questions, ask for advice, because they've been through it. You know this. You're going through it as well. All young adults are going to go through it.
Right.
Why not simply ask advice for somebody else that has gone through it as well? Never give up on yourself. Look at that person in the mirror and come up with a plan. Follow through with that plan. If you don't follow through with that plan, it's never going to get done, brother.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, other people don't really know your vision more than you know your own vision. So people are detached from what your vision and your goals are. So I don't want to say people don't care what they are, but nobody knows. So without you following through on your path and knocking down those walls and fulfilling your dreams and your passion, it's not going to get done, brother.
Right.
Keep your head up, man. Keep rocking and rolling.
Never give up on your dreams either, man.
Yep.
Nah.
We'll see you next time, kid.
Absolutely. Good.
And may I leave with this? Whenever you're having those dark moments, know that you have people to reach out to.
Absolutely.
And it's okay to have dark moments. As I mentioned in the beginning, do not let yourself go down that rabbit hole. Reach out to someone. Pick up that phone. Don't suck it up. Buttercup. Pick up the phone and ask someone.
Rock and roll.
Beautiful. God bless.
Yep.
God
With that
bless
being
you.
said,
And God bless America.
guys, thanks for watching. Happy 4th. And we'll see you next time. Working Wednesdays. Check it out.
Whoop, whoop.
Boom.